On the table.
Yes, do we know how many people are watching?
You can see on the Zoom session.
Yeah.
The screen will show participants at the bottom.
I don't see the way it's set down. Hey, Bill, do you know how many people are watching?
5.
There we go.
Camera a little bit more to your right, Chris. To your right, yeah. Other right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Thanks.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right, you're rolling. We're live streaming. You're on.
All right, sounds good. So Jim, you got everybody's materials out?
Everybody should have a zonker strip, some dubbing, piece of wire, a piece of lead, a hackle strip. That's it, right, Chris? Oh, and most importantly, a hook.
Hook helps.
And some crystal
Little
flash.
bit of flash. Yep. All right, so I think everybody has everything to start. If not, we'll run it
This is
around
Chris.
everyone.
Chris Williams, and he's conducting the class tonight, and he is a very good fly tyer. So, and his flies catch fish.
He's also got a website,
Yeah, called
called Fat Finger Fly Tyer. And you can see all the instructions for almost any fly that catches fish.
I won't say any fly, but there's 60 or 70 up there now with tutorials. So yeah, tonight's pattern is Clouser Swimming Nymph. So, you know, I've told a lot of you guys before when I've given talks, as far as I'm concerned, you know, Clouser's deep minnow, lefty crazed deceiver, and a woolly bugger will catch any fish that swims, at least for warm water. This is probably the 4th thing in my box. So Bob Clouser created these as a smallmouth fly up on the Susquehanna River when he was tying early on, shortly after he actually did the Clouser's minnow we all know and love down here. Turned out though, what it really appealed to were carp anglers. So it works great on bass. In fact, Drew Price, an angler up in Vermont, who's a guide on Lake Champlain, was talking on Tom Rosenbauer's show the other day, his podcast, and stated his biggest problem is it's a great carp fly, except he absolutely hates it when he has a client on a carp with this fly and out of nowhere a 15 to 18 inch largemouth or smallmouth comes up and grabs the fly and scares his carp. So awesome warm water fly. The other thing down here I use it on is gar. So I know a lot of people don't want to waste their time with that, but middle of summer, nothing else is biting. They're a lot of fun, and these flies, sight casting to them, seem to do the trick. So I've got a smaller size here. This is about what I use when the carp are on the menu, and tying about what we are today, I'd use that for bass, gar, larger panfish. So we'll go ahead and start out. We have some, I believe, 3X long heavy nymph hooks here. This is a size 8. So we'll go ahead and we will start just making a little thread base right behind our eye. So only need to go back maybe an eye length or 2, and then we can go ahead and trim off our tag. And I am using olive thread here as we have olive materials. As you saw from the ones I hold up, I'll tie this in crawfish orange as well. Black, and then tan and kind of a cream color will work as well, especially on some of the northern rivers where they have some of those larger mayfly nymphs.
How far you bring back the thread base?
Only about 2 eye lengths back. I'm going to go ahead and wrap some lead wire right behind it and then use the thread to secure it. So once we have that done, we'll go ahead, take the non-lead wire wrap, and we'll go ahead and we'll just make a couple of wraps around the shank of the hook. So it can be, depending how quickly you want this to sink, it can be anywhere from about 3 to 5 wraps, go up to 8, 10 if you need to.
Where'd you start the wraps?
I started in the middle, and I'm just going to slide them up to the back of the thread. So in my case, the number I did is decided by the fact that the wrap broke on me. So
is that right behind the eye? Or?
right at the back of my thread. So maybe 1 to 2 eye lengths back. So I'll kind
Bunch it
of,
up all there?
yep, I'll wrap it over the middle and then just bunch it up where my thread is hanging down right now.
Could you maybe zoom in a little bit on the camera?
I don't think we can get it any closer, unfortunately. We're using an iPhone tonight.
Okay, no problem. Thanks.
So for number of wraps, anywhere from 4 or 5 up to 8 or so. The main reason I even put the lead on this is the rabbit strip we're going to use in the tail is pretty buoyant, and there's nothing worse than casting this fly out over a fish and watching it just float on the surface as your carp or your bass swims underneath and doesn't notice it. So a little bit of lead will help get it through that surface film, but not enough to force it down to the bottom right away.
So the front edge of the lead wraps should be 2 high.
About 2 eye lengths back, yep. Somewhere 1 to 2 eye lengths back. That way you can we'll eventually build a thorax over it. So once we have that on,
Okay, now this lead wrap. How many times around?
4 to 8 times around, yep.
Got it.
So I ended up with about 5 solely because my lead broke off after 5 wraps, but. So once we've gone ahead and have that on there, just do a couple of wraps back and forth over the lead to kind of secure it in place on the hook. So once you do that, it shouldn't move too much.
No, it's not.
Let me try. You gonna try?
Yeah, I'll try. I don't know.
See if we can do something with that, yeah. Well,
No.
just the ability to, unfortunately. So once we've gone ahead and done
You
that,
said non-lead, meant thick.
yeah, it's the thick wire, yes. Oh, sorry, yes, we have 2 wires.
It was thick, a little slow.
All right, so once we've done that, we're just gonna go ahead and wrap back, covering our shank to, somewhere between the point of the hook and the barb of the hook. So it'll finish off our thread base and give us something to tie down the rest of our materials on.
Right between the point and the bar.
Yep, yeah, just a little past the barb before it really starts to bend too far. So. Next material we're going to look for is just going to be our flash. So you should have a couple of strands that Jim gave you. It's the gold kind of crimped material. Did
And this, somebody get some?
think we made,
That gold stuff?
so we're going to go ahead and we're just going to tie in a couple of strands on top of the shank of our hook and leave a little bit extending off the end. It doesn't matter. You can make this as long as you want, and we'll trim it to length when we're done. So extending off the end, hold it with your left hand along the top of the shank and make a couple of wraps with your thread to secure it in place.
So you said 2 strands?
2 to 3 strands. I only use a little bit of flash if I'm targeting carp with it. If I'm targeting gar, I mean, I have an example here where I even left off the rabbit fur and just made the tail out of flash to get their attention. But
Okay, so where are we tying that flash in?
top of the shank, right at the back of our thread base. So you'll have the flash extending off the bend of the hook.
Got it. Thanks.
As a tail, right?
Yep, yeah, it's gonna be,
It's gonna go down on like that.
yeah, it'll kind of slope down or extend off the back depending where you stopped your thread wraps.
Okay, full length. Okay.
Yep. And then we'll just trim the excess in the front. If you want more flash, you could always pull it back and tie that down as well. I'm fine with just having a little bit of it in there though. So in the end, we're going to want this to extend a little bit past the rabbit fur we're going to tie in, but the length doesn't matter for now. We'll just go ahead and trim it afterwards. So once everybody has the flash on, we're going to go ahead and take the little rabbit strip you have and go ahead and take a fairly decent chunk of the fur, and we're going to clip it free at the base from the strip. There is a bit of an undercoat to these, so go ahead and try to hold it by the tips.
You're
And
just pulling out a little bit of a hair.
yep, and pull out some of that under hair. Like, don't pull hard enough to yank the tips from your hand, but you will see there's some fuzz that comes out.
And about how much of it?
That'll vary depending how big of a fly you want. I took maybe between a 1/4 inch and a 1/2 inch off of there. You can go a little more if you want a thicker fly.
Stuff doesn't pull out, you gotta cut it, right?
Yep, you got to cut it. So we'll go ahead, once we have that, hold the tips in your left hand, and we're going to tie that in right over your flash on the tail. You can kind of push it down both sides of the shank, pin it between your fingers, and secure it with a couple of loose wraps and then pull tight. And then just give it a few more wraps and we can trim any excess in front of our tie down point.
They're gonna make much money on this.
Ugly flies will catch fish.
Sometimes the earlier the better.
Exactly. So at this point, if you've got some longer flash sticking out beyond your tail, trim it so maybe it just sticks out a 1/4 inch past the end of your rabbit fibers. So you just, your crystal flash that you tied off the end. So trim it so it's just a little bit longer than that rabbit tail. All right. All right, so once we have that done, we're going to go ahead and take the gold wire that Jim should have given you. And we'll go ahead and just tie that in along the side of the shank of the hook, extending back off of it. And we're just going to leave it there and we'll use that as a rib after we dub our body. So just hold it to the side. Go ahead and wrap it down with your thread till it's secure, and it should just extend back out of the way for now.
So the wire's threaded back towards.
Yep, wires trailing back past the tail. Yep.
Thanks. Where do you, where's the thread end up hanging?
Go ahead and finish with your thread back at the base of the tail. We're going to go ahead and dub an abdomen forward from there once we have the wire in.
Where's the dubbing start? About right where the,
Dubbing will start right in front of the tail, and we'll work forward to just behind our lead wraps when we start that. Hey, Jim. I think he forgot to give everybody peacock. Need that in a little bit. 4 to 6. I mean, yeah, it's just kind of the something like that. All right, so once we have the wire in, we're going to go ahead and use a dubbing noodle to just kind of make an abdomen going forward. So essentially, I know we have a few new people in the room here. Dubbing is this kind of clumped hair we have. If you have some dubbing wax, Mike, do you have some they could use?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. I don't know if you can show them how to do that part.
Don't use it where you use it. You put it on thread.
I put it on the thread and then I take a small amount and twist it between my fingers and create a dubbing noodle going up the thread.
All right, so put this on your thread, and then you have to dubbing six in. What I do is I put it on your fingers. Then
So
you
once-
can roll the
I was just told to get it out. I know we have.
thread. Yeah.
So we're gonna go ahead and dub forward to just behind where we have our lead-free wraps on our shank.
You got, you got. Okay.
Here's the problem, here's the problem sticking. You want to go ahead and, dub it onto the.
Yep, go ahead and dub forward to stop just behind where the lead wraps are.
Oh, big on girl?
Yeah.
School investment shoes.
Right behind the lid.
Yep, you can go ahead and stop right behind the lead.
You want to tape it or level going up there?
All depends what you're trying to imitate. I keep it fairly level, tying in green and just use it as a damselfly. If you're doing a crayfish, you may want something, an orange, you may want something a little bulkier towards the front.
Okay. It's pretty fat noodle, right?
Yep.
Pretty fat, you say?
It's down to preference for that. I make these a little bulkier when they're on this size hook. If I'm using my smaller hook, I'll keep it pretty thin and sparse.
Stop at the back of the lead, right?
Yep, stop at the back of the lead.
And on the. Is that okay? Start back here with the wraps. Start with the dubbing right. What's on your fingers? It'll give you better. Let's purchase. We doing any more, Devin?
We'll put a little more on the thorax in a moment, but
You point to where your wire is?
oh, sorry. Yep. So my lead-free wraps start right here. My wire, the gold wire, I still have not wrapped yet. That's going to be our next step. It's still hanging off the back.
Okay,
It's really hard to see what's on there.
Yep.
So we're still not doing anything with the gold one.
That'll be our next step, just making sure everybody's ready to go. So once we have that, we're going to go ahead and kind of make a segmented abdomen by wrapping and using that gold wire that was hanging off the back as a rib. You can do somewhere between kind of 3 and 5 segments when you're doing this, just depending on what your preference is. And go ahead, same thing. Stop right at the rear of your lead wire. Secure it with your thread and go ahead and pop off the gold ultra wire, whatever excess you have.
Where do we want, I'm sorry, what?
Oh, sorry. So we're just wrapping forward, creating a rib that stops at the front of the dubbed abdomen. With your gold wire.
Ah, gotcha, okay. Then we're gonna cut it.
Yep, then just, yeah, trim any excess once you have it secured.
You want to fold it forward and wrap over it, and then pull it backward and wrap it back. And then you can. We'll try some more.
When you,
It's a good one.
do that wire.
4 weeks.
Looks good.
Get put some tension on it, pull it back,
How many springs?
and spin it like that. 30 minutes. Way you don't
All right.
shrunk that.
So once we have our wire secured, next thing you're gonna need is the peacock herald that just got passed out. And we're gonna go ahead, hold that in your left hand with the butt ends facing forward, and we're, 4 to 6. This is gonna be kind of a wing case, I guess, the back of the thorax. So just depends on how broad of a wing case you want. So we'll go ahead and hold the butt ends forward and secure it with our thread right on top of our lead-free wraps there. So you should have peacock herald extending back over your fly at this point. And once you have it secure, go ahead and just trim the butts that we're sticking forward.
Where'd you tie it in?
I tied it in right over the lead wraps. So right at the back edge of the lead wraps. Well, the back edge of the lead wraps. So it's gonna be a thorax. We're gonna pull that over the soft tackle we're gonna put on in a moment.
Okay, so it's gonna fold over from the rear to the front.
Right, so I don't know if you can see from there. So it's about, my lead wraps are about 2 eye lengths back. It's right over the back edge of that. Glasses come in handy. Some sort of magnifying glass or magnifying glasses make a big difference.
Are you tying the peacock herald up behind the lid wire?
Yeah, so I'm tying it right on the back edge of the lead is where I'm tying that in. And then we'll pull it forward from there once we get our other materials in.
I'm sorry, how many of those would you say?
I usually use about 4 to 6.
Let me just, okay, this next one's here.
So you went and cut off the front tips.
Yep, you can cut those off.
Where'd you go?
4 to 6.
Where we cutting off?
The front tips of your,
Just the butt ends of the peacock herald.
after time.
All right, so once we have those tied in, next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and hold one of the soft hackle feathers by the tip. And we're gonna go ahead and kind of slide everything below where we're holding it backwards. So you're gonna have a little bit of a gap that kind of forms on the stem itself, and that's gonna be our tie down point. So we don't want to break it off. We're just gonna hold the tip and slide the feathers back, and that way when we tie it in, we're not gonna catch those fibers that we're using, if that makes sense. So once we've done that, sorry, so it'll look like, I can bring it over to you.
Yeah, did you already pull off
I did, you don't need to, you can do that at the end either way. Yep, and we're gonna go ahead and right in front of the peacock, lay that down and tie it in by that little tip section.
concave side down or?
Oh, honestly, I alternate. It's just a messy fly, so I don't concern myself too much with it.
Yeah.
Same thing, we'll go ahead and secure that over our lead. If you got some little excess coming off the front that's in the way of your eye, trim it off. And you're going to want to make sure that's secured pretty well, because when we wrap it, it's pretty easy to pull it free from your thread wraps, and then you got to backtrack.
So are you doing this in front of on the front part of your lead?
Just in front of the peacock.
Oh, right.
Yep.
That's-
Yeah. Quick, from the peacocks here, tied right at the back of the bed.
I actually tied mine right on top of my peacock, but it's gonna go in front.
Right. You're going to wrap it in front. So you can tie it on top of, and you're just going to wrap forward from there. So that's perfect.
To go down, to go up. This.
No, 3 or 4. Yeah, just take. Shorter. Yeah, and you go tie it down. Just a hiccup in there, right?
All right. Tied in by the tip.
Yep.
Right in front. Yep.
Yeah.
So once we have that done, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a little more dubbing, and we're just going to dub forward over that lead right behind the eye. And this is all going to end up covered by other material, your wraps of your soft hackle, but it kind of just forms a base to help it lay down a little easier for you.
Same color then?
Same color dubbing. Yep.
Okay.
So when you're done with that dubbing, you should end up with your thread somewhere just behind the eye of your hook.
Now we need to put that. Just say one more. Start holding the tip forward. Lay it on there and tie it.
Right, so once we've got our dubbing down, we're going to go ahead.
I need a little more dubbing.
You need some more dubbing?
I got Yeah.
All right.
Now, does the dubbing go as far as,
I'll stop the dubbing right behind the eye. So you can give yourself a little bit of space so you don't crowd the eye. But, yep. So,
Here to here.
yeah, you're dubbing over the top of the space.
Okay. That's all right.
so once you've got that dubbing down, go ahead and hold the base of that soft hackle between your fingers, or if you have a hackle pliers with you, which I forgot to bring, makes it a lot easier. And go ahead and kind of push the fibers back a little bit with your fingers so they're oriented towards the rear of the fly. This will just help them lay down a little easier. So if you hold it straight up in the air and just pull back towards the tail a little bit.
Wrap same way you're wrapping your thread, or count on thread.
I have a habit of going the same way. I don't know if it,
Yeah.
I don't know if it makes a big difference in this case. I tend to counter wrap wire, but with things like this, I never crosses my mind with hackle. Good question, though.
Wrap all the way as far as you can.
Yep, so go ahead and wrap forward to your thread and, try to push the fibers back a little bit with each wrap. And this is just going to form the legs coming off of that thorax.
So wrap it in front of the thing that's the wing, or is that gone?
Yeah, wrap it in front of your peacock herald. We're going to pull that over the top when we're done with this. So once you wrap as far forward as you can with it, go ahead and secure it with your thread. Definitely recommend hackle pliers. This is a lot harder without it.
It is.
I thought I had mine. They may have fallen out in my bag. And once you have it secured, go ahead and just trim any of the stem that's left below your tie down point.
Be careful pulling backwards, because that's where the pointy end is.
Yes.
Yeah, it's next.
All right. So once you have that forward, just secure it with thread.
Wrap forward.
So you hold the end of your soft tackle and just wrap the thread over it. You should be somewhere right behind the eye now with that.
Now, do you want to leave some of the dubbing exposed like I said?
Not necessarily. I usually just have a small thread head at the front of mine. And then once you've that and kind of part it along the top of your finger and push those soft hackle fibers down onto each side. We're going to pull it forward over the top, and we're going to go ahead and secure it with your thread, making kind of a wing case over top of all those legs we just made with the soft hackle.
Pull it tight, Chris, or when you come across, you pull it tight?
Yes, I pull the peacock herald tight over the top of it. Yep. Yep. So once you have the peacock herald secured, you can go ahead and just clip it off right behind the eye of the hook. And at that point, just build a little thread head right at the front and whip finish, half inch tool, whatever you like to do to finish it off. I was gonna say, you could leave it as antennas as well. And if you want to, you can put a little Flex Seal or UV resin on it. If you are carp fishing though, you're probably better off without. Carp have a pretty good sense of smell, so any of those kind of fixtures you use at the end will spook a carp away from your fly.
So you just cut the peacock feathers.
There's from the top side.
Okay, mine looks pretty close, but I need to do it about 2 or 3 more times to get it right. My thorax is a little bit too, not quite as long as that.
And yeah,
But it can vary, I
it
guess.
can vary.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the hook you use, and it's probably even a little longer on
Let
that
me look at
one. So that's the carp size I normally use.
What size do you use for bass?
For bass, I would use something about this size. Yep. And they'll take the smaller one too, but kind of the bigger, larger damselfly, dragonfly, crawfish size.
Faster it sinks, the more lead, deeper you go.
Yep, yeah, put a little more lead if you wanted to go deeper. A lot of times I'm fishing in less than 2
Use
feet
a
of water.
fluorocarbon. Leader, maybe.
If I'm targeting carp, I use an 8-pound fluoro usually. Bass 6 or 8 probably.
Crappie, you probably get it with a 4.
Oh yeah, you could drop it down with crappie, I'm sure.